Up next is Charlotte Zhao. She told me to remove the H. So yeah, Charlotte Zhao, how to find your element. There's a lot of stuff amazing about Charlotte, but I'm gonna allow her to tell you and not spoil the surprise of her talk. So can we put the hand together for Charlotte, please?
Hi, good afternoon. Now we're all energized. I'm sure pretty much everyone won a prize, right? All right, don't worry about it. If you didn't, I'm here to share with you a way to win a prize in life. Isn't that better?
All right.
So my name is Charlotte, and I'm here to tell you how to find your element. We are facing an epidemic of disengagement in the workplace, right? Many people at work don't feel a sense of purpose. They're merely tolerating what they do on a daily basis. And it's hugely a result of the education system, because we've been herded towards certain subjects that are deemed valuable and away from some others that maybe we're more naturally interested in. So how do we define element? There are two parts to it. The first circle is what we love doing. And just to be clear, it's not just we love the idea of something, but to actually love the day-to-day, the process of doing some work. Another circle is what we're good at. So the overlapping area would be your element. And it's possible you have more than one element here, right? And according to research, it takes about 10,000 hours of deliberate practice to be great at something. So if you love something enough, you could be great at it and make that your own element. So I start by sharing a story of myself and how I'm living in one of my elements. I grew up speaking only Chinese, and there was just no English class offered at school until middle school. And the summer before middle school, my mom sent me to a 2-week course. I only realized after attending the course it was intended for people who've already done a whole year of English, right, at middle school. So I had no idea what the teacher was talking about. And everyone in the classroom seemed to be doing way better than I did. So my touch point, my first introduction to English, was full of frustration. I had no idea what was happening, right? But also, thanks to it, I was forced to figure out a way to learn for myself, to teach myself. So by the end of the 2-week course, I somehow ended up graduating the third in the class. I still remember very clearly because I couldn't believe it happened. But also at that moment, I cracked the code. I figured out how to learn quickly and how to teach yourself, right? And as someone shared earlier, ambition is a journey. It's not a goal. And so a few years later after that, I had the ambition to study overseas. And I have to say, to illustrate why English became one of my elements, at the point of that 2-week course, I guess I learned some English, right? Definitely wasn't at the level I could converse with native speakers. And I didn't know if I loved it just yet, but thanks to pirated DVDs that were circulating in China, they all came with terrible subtitles. Even with the tiny bit of English I knew the subtitles were rubbish. So rubbish that I was frustrated enough to say to myself, I want to become fluent so I can understand the dialogues. And that's when I started loving the language, right? And a few years later, I had the ambition to study overseas, and my family couldn't afford it. So the only way was to win a full scholarship. And I was living in a city in China at the time. It was very local. Like I might have seen one foreigner growing up. And I remember so well because it was a black person. And I remember at the time not understanding much. I literally yelled out on the street to my mom, like, look. You know, anyways, it's unimaginable here in London, such a cosmopolitan international place, but that's where I grew up, just to paint a picture, right? But I had the ambition of wanting to live a global life, and the only way to fulfill it at the time was, you know, what I could see was to secure a scholarship, a full scholarship. And I had no way of benchmarking myself against other international applicants, but I think the desire was strong enough for me to want to try. But really, the way I motivated myself wasn't just by focusing on the positive. I motivated myself by letting the fear boil. You heard me right. I really let my fear boil there. I let myself imagine a life where I didn't take a chance, right? I carried on living in a place where I felt was too small for me, in a society that I didn't like. I imagined feeling a sense of dread on a daily basis. It was so suffocating that I realized in a moment that taking action, and even with the potential of having a lot of hard work ahead of me, was actually the easier path. And that's when I was able to take a chance at myself. And everything worked out. Since that, I've lived in 4 other countries and enjoyed new cultures and languages. And through the application of self-directed learning, I was able to discover other elements in my life. And I would like to share with you some top tips on how to learn as an adult. And I would say that as adults, we have the potential to be better learners than children. So forget about what you've been told at school, right? So recently, I applied self-directed learning techniques to teach myself coding. And I was able to go from not knowing anything to landing a job that computer science PhD students were competing for in 2 months' time while working full-time. And this is something that everyone can do. It's just that we've been trapped by traditional education, very unfortunately. So top tips on how to teach yourself. Oops, I think this. Oh. All right, I guess I'll just say it then. Number 1, find mentors. Find mentors so you can get encouragement. Find mentors so you can break down the key knowledge pillars required for a subject area or a specific role, right? And you'll be surprised at how many people are willing to help if you ask nicely. Once you have mentors, the second thing is to do research. And you will find more than just one mentor, I hope. Find multiple mentors, get their recommendations, and do your own research thoroughly. Right? You might spend as much time researching the right materials to learn for yourself as you would spend learning, and it's worth it. The third thing is don't get bogged down if in the beginning there are some things you don't understand. Right? Just power through. It's really no different to how babies learn languages. We think babies have talents in picking up languages so effortlessly. We still have it in us. All it requires is to let go of our ego a little bit. Be okay with not knowing, right? And really, the way babies learn languages is just through repeated exposure. They don't overanalyze. When they hear something they don't understand, they don't think, oh yeah, what's that word? How do you spell it? None of that. And just one day, suddenly, it clicks. They link the red apple with the sound apple, and suddenly they know. We do the same with learning, even coding. And seriously, that's part of how I learned it, through just listening to it and obviously processing the information. The fourth is to position yourself as a baby in a new area, right? You want to be hungry, you want to ask questions, and that's how you can figure it out for yourself. And last but not least, have fun and share your journey so you can inspire more people to take on the learning sprints. And I think to discover your own elements, it will require some self-reliance, because in the beginning, your existing circle, might discourage you from venturing out of the comfort zone. They're afraid that you might change too much and you might not be their friends anymore. But it's your life. You have to find your own elements. And the only way to find your own elements is by trying many different things and go beyond the initial frustration that we all experience as learners. If you power through the beginning phase, when you enter a level where the new knowledge and new skill becomes something you can apply, that's when you know if you really love something. And that's when the 10,000 hour rules apply and you can become a master of it. And find your own tribe. Find people who are interested in the same things so you can encourage each other. And you get to make new friends along the way. The most important thing of all is to remember that our ability to learn never diminishes if we can position ourselves as beginners. The war is inner. It's inside us. Yeah. I hope you join me on the quest of finding your own elements.
Okay. I love Charlotte. Any questions for Charlotte? 161. I remembered your raffle ticket.
Yeah, what I was going to ask was, what if you feel like you've really found your element? What do you do to enhance it, or how do you know that that's the right element if you've really got it in your head?
Sure. So I guess one example I shared is about leading a global life. And it's almost like one of my addictions to be moving to new countries and making new friends. You feel alive. I guess that's how I would describe it. It's like, a lion being trapped in a zoo, even though it's a very comfortable life. You get fed every day, you don't need to hunt for yourself, but you lose that rigor. And when you are in your element, time becomes an abstract concept that 5 hours may feel like 5 minutes because you're so immersed in it. And you'll meet people who make you smile naturally. I think that's when you know.
Yeah, I was just thinking, when you think of a plant being in the right element and environment, it is going to flourish the best way it can. So that's what I just saw there, being in the best and correct environment for you, then you should be flourishing the best you can. Next question, Miss Catwalk.
Another maybe circle, or even more circles that nowadays you feel like adding up to your drawing that you made already? Is this something that, another lens that you'd like to add to it? What do you think?
Well, it's quite popular for people to add a circle that's called market needs. But I'm discouraging people from looking at it that way, because I think if you are able to think out of the box, whatever you're good at, you can find a way to make it marketable, right? You just find the right pitch to help people realize they need it. So focus on doing what you love, and everything else will come naturally.
Does that satisfy your question? Yeah, I believe so. Thank you.
Darren?
So I was talking to somebody in the audience earlier who is a mum, and her dream is to code. So how did you learn to code so fast in 2 months? What did you do to share that story?
And can we just explain what coding is for people who may not know what coding is?
Really? Explaining coding?
You explain.
Okay, so coding is also called software engineering. That you use technology. You basically, it's a language that computer speaks. So you learn a way to command computers to do things that you want it to do. Okay. So how I taught myself coding in 2 months' time. And part of it, 1 month of it was really to figure out how to nail the interview process for engineers. I did exactly what I shared with you. I started by finding mentors, because it's such a vast topic. You think about people spending 7, 8 years getting a computer science PhD degree, and they still sometimes don't get the kind of job I was trying to get. And so I spoke to people who already had the job. They were already doing what I wanted to do, and asked them about their journeys, and asked them to break it down to me what kind of detailed skills they think they're looking for. So I have a more concrete set of goals that I need to achieve. And I also found amazing organizations in London. I mean, we seriously, we're so fortunate. We live in London that if you make some effort, you can find meetup groups or existing NGOs or even paid courses that could give you access to people who are also learning, right? So I ended up discovering Code Bar. It's an organization that I currently work as a director for, that we teach underrepresented groups coding to help with the diversity issue in technology. So I had many mentors who were both encouraging and helpful in answering my questions. And I learned based on the research I've done, I found resources that were excellent, including MIT's Intro to Computer Science. And I applied the same methods that I use for learning languages to learn coding, because there are going to be some new concepts that the first time you hear it, you're like, this doesn't quite make sense to me. But if you just play the lecture, literally just play it and listen to it multiple times. And funny enough, our brain works in very magical ways. It works in the background. The second time about, it just clicks. It's really that simple. If you just persevere through and have that holistic view of a subject area, the connection will come. And also, fundamentally, learning is about forming new neuron connections, right? So as adults, the more experience we've had in our lives, there are more existing neurons there are, the easier there is for a new neuron to hook onto something. So we're really positioned to be better learners than children.
Maybe that mother, I'm not going to call you out because I don't know who you are either. Maybe you can come and find Charlotte on the next break and have a conversation. She could be your mentor. I don't know.
Happy to. Thanks.
It sounds similar. It's like reward pathways, wasn't it? It's like you kind of said, it sounds like you really knew what you wanted to learn, and you had a real drive inside of you as to why. How important to you was the drive behind what you were trying to learn?
I think the drive is very important, but the same as when you find the drive, you also find your love for something, right? So in the case of, say, learning English and be determined to lead a global life, that pirated DVD moment it seemed so small and bizarre, but it was very real and personal. And that's the thing. I think I encourage you to all look for something that may not sound all glamorous. Like, it's not like I'm hoping to change the world, right? Those big dreams, they might be inspirational in the beginning, but for it to sustain you long term, it might not be enough. And the DVD thing was real to my day-to-day life. The frustration was there. And really, tap into fear. Fear is very powerful motivation. I think sometimes, well, just like a speaker shared earlier, the pain is a very good, like guide for where you should take your life, because essentially the positive things we obviously appreciate, but when we experience something positive, we kind of want to just stay in that zone. It's less about change. We want to keep the status quo more, right? When it's fear, when it's pain, you want to make change happen. And use your imagination to magnify the fear, to make it as unbearable as possible, so that needle in your butt is going to be big enough, bloody enough for you to jump off and do things.
Apologies for that graphic language. Just before 161, I just wanted to say, I'm really thinking about the black man who you shouted out when you was a child
He was very good
on the street.
He was very
He was
good
very good looking.
Yes,
Okay.
I remember.
Is that what you shouted out, or did you just shout black man? I just want to know.
Chinese.
In Chinese, black man. Okay.
You need to forgive me. I was 5-year-old and like it was, in
You're
this place
forgiven.
where you literally see no foreigner.
Yeah.
Like,
You're forgiven.
I just wanted to ask one more question about the languages.
Sure.
I'm really fascinated by that side. Or the opposite kind of way around. How hard do you think it is to learn Chinese, and what actual style of Chinese were you speaking? Was it Cantonese? Was it Indian? Was it Mandarin?
So my mother tongue is a dialect. It's called Sichuanese. So I learned Mandarin at school. As for how hard it would be to speak Chinese or to learn Chinese, I think it's very important when it comes to language learning. I'm a strong believer it's important to move away from textbooks and grammar and make it usable, applicable from day to day. And it's almost like comparable to learning how to swim. Right? You can rationalize how to swim, but unless you're actually throwing into water, you don't get that. And it's like to learn language, it's better to start with doggy style, as in swimming, because. Wait, what? Sorry. No, sorry. I'm sorry. Oh my God. How do you call that style of swimming? Like the doggy.
Doggy paddle.
Doggy paddle.
Doggy
I'm sorry.
paddle. Zero. Okay.
Excuse
Try wrap it up.
It's fine. It's fine. Doggy paddle. Just the bare bone. Make sure you can converse with people. And if you really think about it, there was a research. The amount of vocabulary used in New York Times, right? There were only about 2,000 words. So you only need to master about 2,000 words to
Engaging conversation.
engage,
Yeah.
well, beyond engaging conversation, but like to be pretty decent in a language. So focus on the words you need and just start by watching movies.
Okay. Thanks for your question.
Well, me,
Others,
everyone.